In this episode, I invite you to think about this future-focused question. What if we had greater clarity on who is our ideal visitor, enabling us to achieve a more targeted, more sustainable, and more profitable approach to growing tourism? To help you answer this question, let's recap what we know. Visitation to the Yarra Ranges is significant and growing. However, the majority of visitors are Melbourne day trippers. Unfortunately, day trippers are the lowest spending types of travellers compared with domestic overnight visitors and international visitors. Furthermore, the concentration of day trippers during weekends and public holidays places considerable pressure on local infrastructure without much midweek economic contribution. We also know that the Yarra Ranges attracts hardly any interstate or international visitors, despite the region having so many attributes that could appeal to these source markets. Unfortunately, intrastate visitors, or visitors from Victoria, have the lowest per-person visitor spend by source market. Their economic contribution might be significant as visitor volumes increase, but is that what you really want? Conversely, you would not need such high volumes of visitors to achieve or exceed the same economic contribution if you instead seek to target interstate and international visitors. Lastly, we know that there is a shortage of tourism infrastructure, in particular purpose-built visitor accommodation. Furthermore, the trend towards converting housing to Airbnb-style tourist accommodation has occurred at the expense of the local housing market. This has negative flow-on effects for the entire economy, particularly when industry increasingly struggles with a shortage of skilled workers who need affordable accommodation. So, what does this mean? Here is the challenge in a nutshell. Despite experiencing steady growth in visitor arrivals, Yarra Ranges is not fully capitalising on opportunities to attract high-value travellers, new businesses, and entrepreneurs. The consequence of not addressing these challenges is that in the absence of a strong segmentation strategy and sustainable investment attraction strategy, Yarra Ranges is unlikely to achieve sufficient economic growth from tourism. This could jeopardise some of the stretch goals in the economic development strategy. So, returning to the question of what if we had greater clarity on who is our ideal visitor, here are a few ideas I've prepared to help you visualise what this could look like. Number 1. Quality versus quantity. Focus on economic contribution, not visitor numbers. As a segmentation strategy, decide who the ideal visitors are based on economic contribution, measured in visitor expenditure rather than visitor arrivals. Number 2, look beyond the status quo. I'm referring here to who's visiting, where they're coming from, and their purpose of visit. Firstly, I suggest reducing reliance on day trippers by focusing on higher visitor spend categories. In other words, domestic overnight visitors and international visitors. Secondly, I suggest expanding the primary source market from Melbourne to include higher visitor spend categories. In other words, interstate and international visitors. And thirdly, don't limit your segmentation strategy to just travel for leisure. Other categories such as business travel and sporting events provide significant niche opportunities. And idea number 3, elevate the destination brands to iconic global status. Choose a destination identity that aligns with community values and that will differentiate Yarra Ranges from other competing destinations. I would suggest establishing a globally recognisable identity around regenerative travel. This aligns with a niche but emerging and lucrative tourism trend that appeals to visitors who are not just satisfied with reducing their environmental footprint. Instead, they want to leave a destination better than they found it. Currently, there is a gap in the Australian market catering to regenerative travel. New Zealand is the nearest globally recognisable competitor. This presents an opportunity for Yarra Ranges to gain first mover status in Australia. If you want more information about regenerative travel, click the link below to a recent New York Times interview with a colleague of mine, Jonathan Day, who is an associate professor focused on sustainable tourism at Purdue University. And finally, increase council's commitment to attracting and advocating for the right types of tourism infrastructure, especially purpose-built visitor accommodation. Currently, council is somewhat hamstrung in dealing with the shortage of visitor accommodation due to factors such as land availability, planning regulations, and green wedge restrictions. I would suggest that council could have a much more proactive approach for dealing with this issue, which is a significant barrier to growing tourism as a more prominent driver of the local economy. So there you have some options relating to the question, what if we had greater clarity on who is our ideal visitor? I hope that these have sparked a few reactions and ideas of your own. We really want to hear your thoughts. Write them down in the reflection journal and send them to the economic development team. And of course, you can write your comments in the section below.